Hi there, I'm Don.
And hi, I'm Cindy. Welcome to Pearls of Liberty, September 15th in the last year of the Earth, 2012. Not really. We are going to try to keep everything light this week because there's just so much going on, but we definitely want to address Libya and the involvement of Al-Qaeda and just the hyping up of tensions between Judeo-Christians and Muslims.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really heavy week. I think in years from now we'll look back and we'll say this is the week that they tried to kick off World War III and it didn't work. At least I'm hopeful that's going to be the result. We don't know yet. We're being weighed in the balance, and what you decide, what you seek out, and what you decide to give your energy to with the information that's coming forth right now is extremely important. We've got both this Muslim hate hype and this beginning of QE3, which isn't even QE3, and we're going to talk about all of that this week. So the first thing is the Islamophobia and all of that happening in the Middle East, supposedly being kicked off. This is the cover story. This is what's being pushed in the mainstream media. These Muslims are mad about a movie, and this movie is really hateful to Muslims, and therefore they're protesting, and they're in angry mobs over this movie. Sorry, folks, that's just a blatant lie, and I'm really surprised that people seem to be buying this. It's not about some propaganda movie. These people are protesting NATO's involvement in the drone attacks, and nations that are allied with NATO helping out with the drone attacks. That's what's happening in Egypt. That's what the protests are going on there. In Libya, it's a little different because we've already had the CIA coup there that's completely reversed the pro-Western stance. So it's different, but it's all about us being given a cover story that's completely different from what's really happening in the real world. Yeah, the Muslims are angry, but it's being hyped up. It's purposely happening in order to set the stage for this clash of civilizations and the beginning of World War III. That's what's going on. We, especially as Christians, need to see past the hype and to not go rah, God, get those bad people that hate Jesus. No. It's not like that at all. This is all about deception from the father of lies that's trying to cover up the truth from the God of light and love and the Jesus that died for all men so that we might all be brothers and love one another. This is the gospel that we seem to have lost sight of. I've gotten off into a religious rant, but it's important to see the big picture here and to see how much deception is going on.
And there is a excellent Michael Rivero video, and we are including the link to that in our notes on our website and our comments on YouTube.
As well, there was a Northeast Intelligence Doug Hageman blog that covered in written form the same material that Mike Rivero covered that after I shared that with you. So that's another thing we're going to throw up there, and that's just excellent information. I think Mike might have actually been going off of that in his video because it's a lot of the same facts. It's uncovering all of this deception that's going on there.
An interesting little side note is it has to do with we're not really into astrology, but we have become aware that beginning today, September 15th, and going through September 23rd, there's a unique alignment of Uranus and Pluto that's called a square. And this happens every so many years, and when it happens for a period of about 3 years. And it just so happens that this week is one of those squares. And it's not significant if you're a Christian, you don't believe in astrology, except for the fact that the cabal does believe in astrology. And they manipulate these astrological periods of significance because they believe that in so doing, they can get the biggest bang for their buck. So this, until the 23rd, is a time that there's potential for a lot of strife, a lot of conflict, and possibly some significant change.
It's been a long time since I was into astrology, and that was before I became a Christian. And now, after having been a Christian and a truther, and being back in touch with some of the people that do rely, or at least are aware of astrology, I don't necessarily see a conflict, so I want to explain a little bit more. The energies that are involved with the planets don't necessarily mean that you're worshiping them, it just means you're recognizing them. In this case, the energies of Pluto, which is no longer classified as a planet, but still, nevertheless, its energies have been categorized in the fields of astrology as being having to do with deep motivations and having to do with subconscious, underlying forces, etc. Uranus has to do with unexpected events, sudden changes. So, and a square, meaning the 90-degree angle between Pluto and the Earth and Uranus, is an alignment that is tended to be less than harmonious. It sort of causes the negative aspects to come out. So you can see it's a perfect setup for bringing out suppressed hatred. And that's exactly what the elites are attempting to do in this situation. I have no doubt that they have maneuvered these underground operatives to act in the manner that they're acting in order to bring about this clash of civilizations and countries that causes the World War III. I tuned into, for the first time in, gosh, probably months, into the local right-wing neocon radio station in the Bay Area, and there was a lot of that going on. There was a lot of this, oh, those bad Muslims, a lot of that going on, and I have no doubt that that's the dominant theme in a lot of conservative circles. And then the counter theme in the liberal circles, or so-called liberal circles, in the Obama regime, is that they're placating the Muslims. They don't understand how it's important to be strong, and so these guys are taking advantage of us. And it's, once you step outside of this, it's so blatantly obvious that both sides are being played in order to bring about this conflict. So the left can blame the right for being reactionary, and the right can blame the left for not being strong enough and not recognizing the hatred that these Muslims have, etc., etc. So it's a time to recognize all that and to move past the hype, and don't let ourselves get manipulated into what they really intend to be the beginning of World War III. And of course, that all ties into the economic situation too. So that's all happening at once.
So as Christians, light workers, people who want to live a holy lifestyle, a faith lifestyle, as Don said, we guard our hearts to not get caught up in the hatred, the desire for revenge. We forgive, we seek peace, we release love. That is a tangible thing that we can do. I think sometimes we underestimate the significance of the realms of the soul and the realms of the realm of the spirit. And again, the Cabal places a large amount of emphasis on this. If they know if they can get people in fear and in hate, that fortifies the position of evil. And this all sounds a little spooky, but it is a spiritual reality. So if you can just what the scripture says, whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are of good report, and it goes on, and all positive things. Think on these things. It can't hurt. And as Don said, we do want to discuss just a little bit about, maybe not a little bit, I don't know, about QE3 And interestingly enough, right after this happened, I thought it was interesting anyway that in Austin, where Alex Jones is located, suddenly there's this big bomb threat. And to me, I thought it might be a diversion away from a serious discussion on QE3, which actually, in effect, is another bailout.
It just turned out that Austin happened to be a microcosm of what's happening there with the Muslim hatred, so-called bomb threat that never happened, and apparently this is being played out on several college campuses across the nation, and it's all an attempt to stir up the hatred, create the fear, and the reporters that happened to be there from the InfoWars said that people were rather blasé because of all the drills, and they didn't seem to be hyped up at all, but that's all part of the acclamation anyway, so it's hard to tell how well the propaganda campaign is working, but judging from what I've seen on the internet about people believing that the cause of the Muslim rioting is this 14-minute video or trailer for a movie that does not even exist. The movie itself doesn't exist except as something completely different from what's been dubbed over in the trailer. It's all a big hype campaign based on disinformation. So people seem to be believing that. So hopefully another few days of exposure on the internet will change that. And that's what I'm hoping for, because if they can't sell their lies, they can't get their war.
So again, it's a diversion away. It's like, look at the birdie, and over here these huge economic decisions are being made. QE3 is in effect another banker bailout. We're in another election year, just like 2008 in many respects. And just a couple months before the elections, we have this banker bailout thrown out, and it's disguised as a stimulus package, but it's a purchase of mortgage-backed securities, and it's a banker bailout.
Yeah, it's not even a purchase of the securities themselves, it's a purchase of the derivatives, and that escalates to infinity. The derivatives they can do derivatives of derivatives on up to the yin-yang, and there's no end to it. This is basically bottomless, and this is not a one-time event, as the others 1 and 2 supposedly were. So it's not even right to really call this a quantitative easing event. It's a policy of 40 billion per month indefinitely.
Yes.
And so everybody's going to go yay because they think that the economy is going to be stimulated. But the banks are not lacking money to lend at this point. The problem is not in the lack of lending. The problem is that we don't have the freedom to rise up and do entrepreneurial things in America anymore, the things that would save our country, save the economy. Small businesses have been systematically, over a period of decades, being shut down or minimalized, marginalized, so that they can't compete with big companies who hire the lobbyists and write the legislation, etc., etc. Those kind of things are not going to be cured by any more money to the banks. This is all lying in the coffers of the elites who are siphoning off the money to build their infrastructure and their enslavement grid and transform America into this police state that's happening before our eyes. So people need to wake up and realize that these bankers are just lying through their teeth, that it's not what they claim to be, and they have willing accomplices in the media, some of whom are just ignorant and some of whom have been bought off. So it's time to wise up and realize what's happening. Time to start alternative economies. I think we mentioned last week the Mountain Hours and other organizations like that that are starting local currencies. This is the thing that will save us if we start thinking about what we can do as communities to cooperate and help one another and survive, because there's this structure being built at the national and the global level that is attempting and is having great success at crushing the initiative of local businesses and entrepreneurs.
And Max Kaiser does a much better job at explaining this than we could do if we spent 3 hours. So we are including a link to Max Kaiser's video about the bailout, and it's a lot of fun to watch. It's basically a rant. So watch it if you have a minute. And we also want to refer to an American Kabuki blog, and this will require a lot more than a minute. It is the history of the world since about 1492, and it covers you've probably heard people talk about huge amounts of gold held by China that were earned by China in the days of the Silk Road. And this is just a tremendous history. It comes all the way up to the present and explains in some detail everything that's happened economically to the world since about 1492, and how enslavement has been imposed on people through selling them cheap goods produced somewhere else. It's not, this right now is not the first time that's happened. I don't think there were Walmarts in the past, but the same thing has happened. Cheap goods imported that forced out the local economy, and all the people didn't have their trades anymore because someone else was getting the money.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I haven't read the whole thing yet. Cindy's told me bits of it, but in the beginning, when Britain was setting up its colonial empire, the original slave sweatshops were in England itself because they hadn't conquered the people to set them up in foreign areas. So the British sweatshops in the time of Dickens, when you can read about the poverty that existed in those days, they used those cheap goods to undercut the economy in India, and the Indian goods were far superior in quality, but also more expensive, and so they created this ability to buy out the Indian people, and they used that to funnel drug money into China, and thereby begin the enslavement of China through the Opium Wars. And that's relatively well known as that's the foundation for the modern secret society, Skull and Bones, and then CIA. So all of this ties together. This is all real history that's largely unknown to Americans and to the West. But the point of this story is that this blog on the American Kabuki is that the elites in China have been aware of this strategy for a long period of time, and they have been taking means behind the scenes to prevent their enslavement by it. So that's why they have the reserves of gold, because they knew that this bubble of hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, was going to burst. And they actually have more gold than the Rothschild, Rockefeller, Western banking empire does. So that's why we have hope in a new banking system, and that's all outlined in the true history that everyone should know. It was all outlined in this article, so we definitely wanted to refer you to it when we found this single source that we've gotten bits and pieces from everywhere. So it's great information, and please pass it on.
And we wanted to tie in a little bit about Benjamin Fulford, and he gives weekly updates pertaining to the progress of overthrowing the cabal. And this week, sadly enough, a Japanese leader who was opposing the cabal and pressing for the introduction of the new world economic system. That's a freedom system based on merit, and he was killed, or he's dead. I'm not sure if they've ruled on his death yet, but Fulford seemed to be convinced that that he had been killed. And a Chinese leader who refused to meet with Hillary came up missing. Whoa, this is like the old
Shades
days
of
in
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Yeah. Shades of men of drug running or whatever, yeah. They never stop with their evil tricks.
No, so yeah, Benjamin Fulford will have the link to his blog.
Yeah, and there's another event that actually happened a couple days after the Monday Fulford blog came out that was on Fulford's typepad that we also wanted to mention. It's really significant. Apparently, there is technology that can detect nuclear weapons in the air, like before one goes off or something like that. I don't know any more details than that because that's all that was mentioned. But the person who owns this company was murdered, and I believe that Fulford uses that word. If not, he strongly implies it. And that technology, Fulford says, was actually used to, that's only his word on this, but we've come to trust him, and if not all of the facts he believes are true, then what he believes he's telling is true. So we say this believing that Benjamin believes it, that the attack that was planned at the Olympic Games that never happened, and you remember us breathing a sigh of relief after everything was okay after that, no false flags during the Olympic Games that many insiders were convinced was going to happen. He says that was thwarted by the use of this technology, and this, within the last few days, the person who is in charge of this company that controls this technology is dead, is gone. So they're paving the way to be able to sideline or directly use this technology so that they can carry out their false flag attacks without detection. So it does make sense that they wouldn't have carried out an event if they knew it was going to be exposed as the false flag and the fraud that it was. We can only hope and pray that once the genie of this technology is out of the bottle, that they're not able to control it, that this can become in the future a way to expose false flag terror.
Just a little footnote, we didn't mention Fulford's blog last week, I don't believe, and a couple of weeks ago on a Monday, he stated that there is absolute conclusive proof that 3/11, the earthquake in Fukushima, was man-made and the cabal was responsible. So that is a very interesting piece of information too, and we will include the video. There's usually a video that's just basically it's audio on YouTube of Fulford's weekly blog, so we'll include that video. And we live in California, and there's talk about Proposition 37, which potentially could ban GMOs. And Monsanto is currently throwing a lot of money at a PR campaign about how wonderful GMOs are. And I know there's the golden rice that supposedly this rice has some splicing in it that caused it to produce beta carotene, and it's being tested on, given to children, and it's just a mess. And if you live in California, please vote yes for Proposition 37.
Yeah, to clarify, when she says it has potential to ban GMOs, what the proposition itself is only to require labeling, or not even require, to allow labeling of foods that are non-GMO. So that would obviously help create public awareness about the whole GMO issue. And those laws currently exist in many countries all over Europe. I'm not sure about Australia, but other areas of the world in westernized, what we like to think as being civilized countries, those laws exist. Not yet in the United States of America, the big home of Monsanto and their headquarters in terms of developing their technology. So our hope is that enough people do become aware of the need to at least allow the labeling of non-GMOs so that GMOs can be exposed for what they are. And there are there's more and more scientific studies coming out that clearly show scientifically that GMO foods are shutting down human organs, leading to cancer, doing all kinds of bad things. And it's pretty hard not to see that this is deliberate and malicious. You can sell it as being resistant to various diseases of crops, but when you don't even test the results of these internal pesticides in the human body and their effects on specific organs that just happen to parallel their effects on other biological systems, well, you know, who are you fooling? This is just madness. So, yes, vote for 37. We need this.
Well, other than that, we try not to vote. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Well, we'll see what happens in the elections this November. But Mike Adams, the health ranger, has a very helpful video that details the impacts of GMOs on various systems in the body and organs, and so we'll have a link to that YouTube video. And do you think that people should let us do their thinking for them?
Ignore everything we say and think for yourself. No, hopefully we're giving you useful information, pointing you in some directions that are useful, but ultimately you need to think for yourself and go in peace. Don't let the drums of hatred and war go into your spirit. That soak up the love that the Creator releases to you.